The biggest problem with renting your home on Airbnb, it's not the income that you can make, but it's overlooked, not really spoken about so much on the internet. It really can get in your way of growing that rental portfolio if you're just using Airbnb alone. And in this video, I'm going to explain that one major issue. Well folks, Michael here, and if you haven't already subscribed, it only takes a second, so click on that link if you want to see more. Also like the video, it really helps the algorithm and I'd greatly appreciate it. So without further ado, sure, I am definitely bullish on Airbnb, on short-term rental, in the sense of the income that it can generate. It can be massive and it's great. It can be game-changing, can be life-changing when you go from no income outside a regular job to suddenly having this extra income. And in terms of comparing what you can make on short-term in certain areas versus long-term, look, at this point, there's some areas where there's an oversupply and oversaturation in the market. But a few years ago when I first got into it, it was just a game changer. And it is still today in some of my properties. Some months are not as good as other months, but the income is fantastic. I get it. I hear it. The allure of that extra income. I remember, seeing numbers like 2,000, 3,000, maybe a little more than 3,000 for long-term rental at the time. And I was seeing numbers more like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I even had one month at 12,000 way back when I was doing short-term rentals. So the differences were really huge. Now it can vary by the market. Sometimes, you're getting 3,000 in the long term and maybe only 4,000 in the short term. It can really vary quite a lot. And over time, by and large, you may see that you're probably not going to expect those incredible Wild West returns that we saw back in the Wild West of the Airbnb short-term rental market. Still, income is great. The biggest problem with renting your home on Airbnb is if you're really trying to grow those rental portfolios, it's going to be next to impossible to qualify the income from your short-term rental. Lenders, by and large, don't want to know. You're making $10,000 a month? That's great. They would rather that you have a long-term stable tenant with a 1-year lease. Maybe they're paying you $3,500 a month rather than you making $9,000, $9,500 a month, and it varies. They're not going to look at the income. They don't want to care. So when I was getting some of my properties, I had to convert them from short-term to long-term for a little while, and I had to put in tenants, and as a result, I was able to qualify to get into further rentals. And then eventually I would switch back, a few years, like when I wasn't looking for properties. But it's very, very difficult. Again, lenders just don't want to know. You got this great income, don't want to know. They want to know long-term, solid, non-Airbnb. Airbnb can be great when you're stacking up the cash, but when you're trying to qualify yourself for a conventional, traditional mortgages, this is the major killer. It doesn't matter how much you make. You make $20,000 a month, it doesn't matter. It's great if you can put the money away for a down payment so that you don't need the mortgage. But if you need the mortgage, this is one of the killers in terms of trying to get ahead. Now, sure, there are some exceptions, but by and large, it's almost impossible to qualify yourself for traditional mortgages. And if you're trying to go from one unit to another unit to another unit and scale the portfolios up, you're going to be qualifying, for instance, if you're buying a multifamily or small multifamily, you're looking at the income that the small multifamily can generate. Usually you take 75% of the income roll and you can basically show that to help you qualify for your income. That means that the debt to income falls because the denominator, the income, starts to get bigger. But if you have, let's say, short-term rentals in the place you're getting, you really can't qualify that. And it's the same with places you already have. If you're trying to show the lenders, like, look, I've got these properties already. Yeah, sure, you might have a mortgage, but you're getting a rent. Well, unless that's a long-term rent and you got a lease and you can show, checks coming in every month, etc., into your account, you cannot qualify. It's almost impossible to qualify the Airbnb income. So that's something that's not really talked about so much. It's different with rental arbitrage. You're not really qualifying in that regard. You're looking at business income, etc., and that can be qualified in a different direction. But just your kind of traditional long-term game of basically going from one unit to purchase and then another unit, and you're building, you're kind of buying one, holding it, buying another, holding that. You're building, you're growing your portfolio. Lenders typically don't really want to know about the short-term Airbnb income. They really want to see that long-term. So keep that in mind that, it's not going to be, and it's not always going to be as lucrative as it has been in previous years. Keeping this video somewhat positive, there is a lot of cash flow, and I hear you. That's one of the beauties of the short-term game. I just love it. That cash flow, you're not talking about 50 a month or 100 a month or negative 200 a month like you get in some of the actual long-term rentals, and you're thinking like, why am I doing this, right? You don't see it. Now you're getting of course, the principal write-down, the tax write-offs for the interest, there's all kinds of deductions, depreciation, you name it, sure, it's under the water. But it just really is nice when you see a few thousand, for instance, above what you're spending every month. So you've almost got an extra job, you've almost got an extra income coming in. So that can be even from just one, let's say, single family unit in a good area. So then you can build your treasure chest a lot faster. If you got this cash flow, one method, for instance, that we see Sean Ray has mentioned in the past has been, let's say when you build, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you got 5 single family properties, you use all 5 to maybe pay off one of the mortgages. And then once that's paid off, you've now got extra take-home income because you're not paying that extra mortgage. You use all 5 then to pay the next one. And then when that's paid off, you use it to pay the next one. And you go faster and faster and faster because at the end, you've only got one mortgage to pay and all the other ones you've paid off already. So you can do that. There's other strategies. You can really pay off things a lot quicker. In terms of your debt to income, it is falling in that regard when you're not actually having as many mortgages. So if you do it that way, you pay your mortgages off faster, great, good for you. This was very popular just before COVID, around the kind of the late teens, in that surge we had before COVID. As well as that, with all this cash flow, with all this income, you can be building up a treasure chest, right? You can be putting money away for the next down payment. Maybe you can't get the mortgage based on it, but at least you're getting so much cash, and if you're doing it right, you can have that grow, put that into the right accounts, generate some interest on it, etc., and you can use that then for next ones. So you do get that build up a little quicker. So there's pros and cons here. However, if you're renting out your home on short-term rental markets like Airbnb, VRBO, etc., just keep in mind that there are lots of legal issues. It could be that it's your town, your borough, etc., your city may not allow it, right? It could be neighbors complain and then they kind of get the local politicians to cut you down, even if there's no laws. Happens all the time. People who I've heard from Bigger Pockets and other forums, they've been on different podcasts, they talk about how, some of their portfolio in the short term, part of that got kind of closed down. It was embarrassing, because it didn't matter if they wanted to work with the local towns, the local boroughs. The boroughs were not willing to go along with them, right? Because nobody wants it in your backyard. NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. A lot of the local residents are going to put up a fight. Just the name Airbnb, right? Just it's kind of negative connotations. They're going to come after it. They're going to complain. Even if there's nothing going wrong, they'll complain. They don't want to know about it. Once you get enough complaints, the local council is probably going to want to close you down, right? They're going to tell you, no, we just don't want it. They'll give you some excuses, but they can, find me the man, I'll find the crime, as they say, right? So they'll find some reason to close you down. And so there's all that to it. There's all the legal nightmares. And of course, there's the damage, the depreciation. There's all that extra wear and tear. So for instance, you could get insurance for external sewer, external water line, etc. And then you might find that, oh, hold a second, what you're doing with short term really is more like commercial, and you'll find that your insurance, there's something in the small line that doesn't cover it. So check your insurance very carefully for some things. I may have seen that happen in the past in certain instances where all of a sudden, no, they're going to get out for certain loopholes. There is going to be more damage in the short-term rental. You are going to see with all the turnover, typically speaking. Now, of course, you're going to have to prepare your place, spend more money to prepare it for a short term than you will necessarily for a long term. So there's going to be a lot of depreciation. Think about it like renting out your car, right? Extra clutch wear, extra wear in your car, right? So it's kind of like that. It's not quite Turo, right? But you're thinking about a house that you're renting out, whatever, for long-term tenants, because they're not the owners, they don't care about it as much as the owners, but short-term, for sure, you're going to get some bad guests. Bad guests are another one. They're going to create issues for you. They're going to be noisy. They're going to make, mistakes, and they're going to maybe park in the wrong spot, annoy the neighbors. They might break things in your house accidentally or not accidentally. It could be intentional. They could be throwing ragers. They could be doing all kinds of things. There's some really horror stories that you get with the tenants. Now, you can get them with tenants too, and there's the legal issues, the tenants, there's a long term, and, you know, trying to evict them, like, good luck with that, right? It can be very difficult. So it's just different issues coming with short term. But it is a business. It is not necessarily real estate in the same sense. So just keep that in mind. It's going to force you to think more like a business. It's good and it's bad, right? You're really, with short-term renting, you're getting into a business. You're almost getting into a job. Now, you can automate that. If you've got managers, great. If you can do that, you can automate your life, and that's how I've done it. I've been able to automate various parts, various components. I now have managers managing all of my properties, so I'm not managing them anymore. And as a result, I'm kind of hands-off, and I can just do it from a distance. And every now and then I check in with my managers and things like that. So even with the short term, it's not really a job for me because I'm no longer managing it. Now, if I was, or if I was with somebody and we were both managing it, then yeah, it would be our life. And it was for a long time. I spent a lot of time managing it. So it is a business. It is very different, but you get different write-offs, different deductions. It's a little, so talk to your tax advisor. There can be certain advantages with the short term. I love short term. I'm bullish on short term, not saying anything against it. Of course, there's certain towns, certain cities becoming more and more difficult to do it every day. But for those that survive and those that are persistent enough, they can hang in there, you know, you'll be basically, hopefully, compensated well enough. Big shout out to people like Sean Rockadich, Sean Ray, of other people on the channels, other YouTubers, other influencers who have got some incredible content, very informative content. Definitely helped me way back when I was starting before COVID. It's your house. You get to decide how you're going to rent it out. But just be careful in terms of the qualification. You're going to go into a place thinking, I'm going to be able to qualify that, and you get caught off guard. So be careful with that. But enjoy it at the same time. And here's to your journey. So what are you going to do? Comment down below. Do you like short-term rental? Do you not like short-term rental? What are you doing with your properties? Do you have long-term rental? Do you have short-term rental? If you don't have properties, what would you like to do? What are your goals? Writing down your goals is half the battle. So write down in the comments, yeah, I don't have these, but I'd love to do short-term rental or long-term rental in the future. I'd love to do single family. I'd love to do multifamily. Tell me what you like. And maybe I'll create some videos in the future that'll answer some of those questions. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe for more wealth building content.